Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Welcome to another edition of the Radical Edge of HR. I am your host, Tanya Hawley, and I'm so excited to be with you once again. And of course, it's the special edition with the Recruitment Alliance, better known as TRA. So let me go ahead and bring in our panelists, my co partners in this, Miss Artie Harrison. Welcome back, Artie.
Welcome. I'm so happy to be here, Tanya. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming back. You know, it's always a treat. And we have Miss Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hey Tanya, hey Artie. Happy to
Hey.
be here. Thank you for helping us with this, Tanya.
Oh, my pleasure, of course. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And of course, we always want to bring everyone's a little nuggets, a little knowledge. So today, everybody, we've got a hot topic, and it is how remote work has changed today's recruiting industry. And that is almost like a buzzword, remote. That's all you hear. So we're going to talk about that today. So during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, the recruiting industry shifted to virtual recruitment practices, just like employees shifted to virtual hiring practices. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And if you're watching us and you have questions, feel free to put them in the comment section, and I'll be happy to ask Artie and Linda to respond. So let's go ahead and get started. So, as a baseline, Artie, what is the difference between hybrid worker and a remote worker? And I hear those terms used interchangeably all the time. And in fact, I think a lot of people think they're the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do probably think that they are the same, but hybrid work is a little different from remote work. So the main difference is that with hybrid workers, Tanya, they're splitting their time between, let's say, a conventional in-office work style and then
Mhm.
working remotely. So in other words, a hybrid model really includes both time working from home and then maybe time working from the office. Now, with remote work, the employees can do their job anywhere. They can work any location that is a central office and maybe operated by the employee. For example, it could be an employee's home. It could be a co-working or maybe some type of a other shared space. Like for example, here in Atlanta, you have places like WeWork office space. You have
Mhm.
like the Atlanta Tech Village and Rome interactive workplace. Those are sort of what you call shared spaces. You can work from there. And also, it could be a private office or just any place outside of the traditional corporate office building or the campus. So, with hybrid, it's a mixture of both, but remote is anywhere outside of the traditional office.
Okay, so not necessarily always home, from what you just said. Now, I didn't think about that.
Actually, on the beach, because if I must say, I have worked remotely on the beach myself.
Oh,
Yes.
that sounds delightful,
Yeah,
Artie.
on the beach.
Yes, when the background noise could be the ocean. Yes,
Yes.
I'm feeling
Yes.
that right now.
Yes. I was in a soothing counseling session with the ocean vibes in the
Oh,
back.
yes. It could be a soothing, a soothing other kind of session, like maybe a session that might not be that pleasant normally. Maybe that'll add some pleasantness to it, like
That's right. That's true.
firing somebody. I don't know. I'm just saying.
That's true. But I mean, literally, you can work anywhere. Got computer will work.
That's right. I love it. So thank you for that because I think a lot of people were mixed up with that. Just to hear it from you certainly um, explains it quite well. So thank you, Artie.
Mhm, mhm.
So has remote work changed recruiting for the better or worse, and why?
Yeah, during the start of the COVID pandemic, the recruiting industry, we ended up shifting to a virtual recruitment practice, right? But what also happened is that the employers, they also shifted. They shifted to virtual hiring practices. So
Mhm.
now the restrictions have been removed. It's easier when you're looking at candidates that are hybrid, when you're trying to recruit for them. The industries have just emerged more. So now what's really become a gold standard for us is hybrid recruitment. In other words, as I mentioned a moment ago, people that have the ability or want to be able to work from home or work part in the office and part at home. It's really changed it because employees can be both in person, but they can also work virtually, and it allows us to recruit them from both platforms. One of the biggest benefits that we found also is just more flexibility in finding candidates. So we're not restricted to a geographic area. If the
Okay.
client wants someone that can complete the job and they don't have to be in the office, it could be here in Atlanta, but the job could be in Utah. They could physically be working from Utah or Canada, anywhere. That's the key, is that our geographic span and location has been broadened. So the walls have been taken down. It has definitely changed it for the better.
Wonderful. We do have a question. Thank you all for joining us, Cherie and Shanika. Shanika is asking, she said, thank you for the explanation. So would virtual work be the same as remote work?
Yes, it could be, because with virtual work, I mean, you're working, whether it's virtually, quote unquote. The key with the virtual is that you're on a computer. You're working through some Zoom, or maybe say Microsoft Teams, something like that. But you can be in that space and be physically anywhere. So the key is being able to perform the job, having meetings virtually through Zoom, as I mentioned a moment ago. But it allows that flexibility for you to just work from any place. And sometimes they have like shared spaces where they have virtual rooms in there where you're not physically in your office in Canada, but you're here in Atlanta, still connected to that main source. So it has just expanded the world for us, and it's allowed us, in the same token, to find some really great candidates that we would normally not even look at because they're not physically here in Atlanta. We're able to look at them on a broader space. So it has done wonders for us.
Yes. And I can see how it would, because if you normally, before all this remote, I think the people that might be out the country may not have as strong a chance of getting the job, right? Unless they were paying, relocation and all that kind of stuff, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's very true, because now we have a global talent pool. Before we might have had a local, now we've got a global talent pool, and our employers benefit from that. We benefit from it as recruiters, but our clients and employers, they benefit from a broader pool of experience, and that's just fantastic. Even our own team here at HRKS, which is the main company for TRA, we have consultants all over the United States.
Right. That's really interesting how things have changed so much. Just in 3-4 years, really?
More significantly since this pandemic for us.
Right. Which we're talking, I think, is it 3 years since COVID?
But yeah, 2019 is when
Yeah, about 3 years. So it's amazing the change that has come about because of that, as far in regard to what we're speaking of today. So who is actually negatively affected by this increase in remote work?
Well, Linda and I were talking about this, and she said to me, can you imagine having brain surgery in your home? And the answer is no, right? Because you want to be in the right place, a physical facility for that, right? Businesses that maybe support, let's say, commuters, business travelers, especially in the transportation and leisure and hospitality, they're negatively impacted, by this increase in remote work, people just working from home, and even in some cases virtually. And this is true because a lot of these businesses, they thrive on supporting traditional office workers. Like if you work downtown, you might have gone to the restaurant, or if you were using public transportation, leisure and hospitality, and even the energy industries, they look for travelers to participate and be a part of their industry. So for example, like I said, if you're downtown and you're, going for a lunch break, you go to the local restaurant, that supports the office workers in that area. But if you don't have people in the office, you don't have as many people coming to the restaurants. Even airline and hotels rely, very heavily on business travelers. And like, for example, if you think about the demand for cars and even public transit, it relies on daily commuters. So if all these sectors have been impacted by remote workers, then you don't have that increase, you have more of a decrease. So we're starting to see a shrink really more permanently in that support, because remote work is increasing,
That's good. I had no idea what the answer to that question was going to be. So I didn't even think about it from those terms. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can find ways to make it up in some other capacity, the ones that are negatively affected.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, you remember when it first kicked off, a lot of the restaurants went to deliveries. So they may not have people physically sitting there, but they still can, alter that to deliveries. But they still have a brick and mortar and they need people in there, right?
Yes, yes, but I know a lot of people are starting to go back out to restaurants because they missed it, and everybody's starting to go back out more. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next question. Is it fair to say that the coronavirus pandemic accelerated the growth of remote work? Why or why not? And Linda, I think this one is for you.
Sure. Definitely accelerated remote work. Before the pandemic, 3/4 of the workforce didn't work remotely at all. And then in 2020, the pandemic really forced over 1/3 of workers to shift to remote. Companies maybe would never consider that in the past. It became a necessity. It really made companies kind of rethink how they work. And during that pandemic, companies basically had 2 years to really study their working models and look at their company culture and really reassess how their employees worked. Today, that demand for remote and hybrid work is still very high, as we see as we're recruiting. And really, the number of paid jobs offering remote work has really doubled by the end of 2021. And that really makes companies look at how to be competitive with candidates. Employers have to look at pretty closely at what they can offer. But they also have to make their workplaces, think about making workplaces inclusive for their employees that are maybe hybrid or working remotely. And so this really will continue to be a focus this year as well, not only on how to possibly transition your employees to remote work, but also how to manage that, how to motivate them, how to make them feel included. And that will continue to be the focus for this year.
Great. Thank you for that answer. So the last question we have is, how have career fairs and job fairs changed since all this has happened?
Career fairs have really changed. During the pandemic, there was still a need for many companies to hire during the coronavirus. And those companies were forced to really turn to creating virtual job fairs and different hiring events in order to find candidates. Being able to maybe have virtual chat rooms, or being able to things that in-person events, because in-person events, I guess what I'm trying to say, were forbidden during the pandemic.
Right.
Companies had to be creative, and they looked at chat rooms and different ways to communicate, and have really discovered that the virtual job fairs have benefits. Typical job fairs, candidates can't always attend if they're living somewhere else. Employers don't have to worry about specific geography of the job fair. They can cast a wider net, attract a more diverse population. Companies can also use technology like videos, text chats to engage candidates. And I actually saw a study the other day that said candidates tend to feel more comfortable when they're interviewed in the comfort of their home. And they're also much more likely to apply to positions that maybe they feel, they normally could not attend a job fair that was maybe, in a different state. And so it really does work that way for candidates too. It opens up their ability to apply for more jobs. Virtual job fairs, they have low overhead. There's not really a need for printed materials. Everything's digital. No travel cost. You're not having to, find a hotel room. And it really appears as though virtual job fairs are here to stay.
Yes. And I have to say, my favorite thing is, and you only have to be dressed from the waist up for the virtual job fairs as well. Right? That's always my favorite thing. I always remember. Nobody can see or just hear. That's it.
But Tanya, and to align with what she was just sharing, when I mentioned how the field is so much wider for employers to get candidates all over the United States, it makes sense that you would have a job fair that would also attract people from all over the
Yes.
United States, around the world, because they literally can work anywhere.
Now, I have never been to a virtual job fair. Can you, either one of you, just explain how it actually works? How do they do that? What do they actually do? How does that work at a virtual job fair? Can either one of you just kind of touch on that? Because I personally haven't, and there may be people watching that haven't either. Just kind of curious to how it actually works.
Mhm.
So I've not personally attended a virtual job fair, but it's my understanding, and Artie, you may know better with this, that individuals actually can attend sessions, maybe subjects that are of interest. They can break the sessions down into individual types of rooms for candidates to ask specific questions about the positions, and candidates can even be interviewed virtually on a one-to-one basis and ask questions one-to-one about positions.
Okay.
That's absolutely true. We actually did participate in a virtual job fair, and it's just as she has described. You can go to the room for the specific jobs that you have an interest in, get more information, and ask the recruiter questions about it. They will typically have a link for you to apply, but it's almost as though you're with that interviewer. You're just doing it virtually, but you have a chance to hear more about it, ask more questions, and be able to put your name in the bucket as a qualified candidate, upload your data. And so it pretty much everything from there works like it would if you were in person. And if you're a selected qualified candidate, then you'll move to the next space. But you have more people in the room. You're just signing up to the room that you have the most interest in. Yeah.
Okay. And that's kind of nice, I would think, because you don't have background noises or interruptions and everyone else around, and if you can't hear someone and that kind of thing. So those things as well, I would think, will work out very well. So thank you for sharing that. We do have one question from Leah. Hey, Leah. Hey, Team TRA. That's what Leah's saying. Can you talk about the differences in the interview and onboarding processes when hiring a remote candidate?
Go ahead and knock yourself out, Linda. I'll piggyback on you because we do this all the time.
Did Leah ask what the process is for interviewing a remote candidate? A candidate for a remote position, is that correct?
The differences in the interview and onboarding processes.
Okay.
When hiring.
So I would say, in terms of if we're interviewing someone for a remote position, it's always interesting to hear whether the candidate has worked remotely in the past and has a true understanding of what that might entail. Also, we do customize for each position that we interview for. We customize the questions based upon the job description, but also based upon some other issues, such as if the position's virtual, we will want to ask questions of the candidate that will help us understand, can they motivate on their own? Are they able to work independently? And so it's really important to kind of define and engage the candidate and determine whether or not that individual, has the ability to work under a little bit less supervision, or even determine, is this person somebody that can work from home, or do they really need a position where they have more interaction, in-person interaction? So we do customize some questions so that we can kind of vet out those that, might not necessarily really be happy with remote.
Yeah. Okay. And to add to what she was saying, in alignment with Leah's question, there are some clients who will also do their interviews, virtually, without bringing the person in the office. The rest of the process is done in-house. So after they make a decision to maybe hire the person or take them to the next stage, then they will either internally process all the paperwork that brings a person on to the workplace, or they have them to do that online if they have an automated tracking system. In some cases, we have clients who will TRA always does a virtual interview like we're doing right now. So if we can't lay our eyes on the candidate, then they don't move to the next phase. We have to be able to have that interaction. And if that's the case, sometimes the clients will do panel interviews virtually or individual interviews virtually. So they still are flexible with that process as well. But when it comes to finally bringing the person on board, then that either becomes, electronically done before the person gets on site. Maybe it's already done, or they may have an on-site onboarding process. So there's still a little bit of a hybridness on the back end process as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, ladies, for that. So I think I'm fresh out of questions. You have answered everything so thoroughly. Was there anything you want to leave our viewers with, or anything you want to add as we close?
But there was one more question that
Did I skip something?
Talked about.
Yeah, I think we had talked about is the direct effect of remote work concentrated in certain jobs and sectors?
Yes, that's a good one.
Already covered that a little bit too, but basically office-based business and professional occupations are most likely to implement remote work. And early in the pandemic, about 3/4 of those types of employees were working from home. I did see a study done by McKinsey that showed that remote work potential is concentrated in a few sectors, with the top two really being finance and insurance. And that it appears as though 3/4 of the duties associated with those types of positions can be done remotely with little loss of productivity. It's one of the reasons why those are such an easy transition. Also, other areas that have a concentration: management, business services, and this one makes sense to me. IT employees have a high level of working remotely and remain highly productive. On the other side of that, we talked about, Artie and I, yesterday, we have clients that are in the manufacturing field. Manufacturing cannot be done from home. The medical field, those individuals cannot work remotely. So it really concentrates more around business type occupations that can be done with no loss of productivity.
Right. And I'm sorry, I did skip that question, but yes, Artie, you did kind of touch on it before when you said brain surgery. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I understand that, because I know some people who, my husband, as a matter of fact, was going to go back to work. They've been remote since COVID. And some of the people they called back, and then depending on what type of position you had, determine whether or not they wanted you to come back into the office. And so they told him you didn't have to, what he did, IT type stuff. So he would go one day a week, but when he went, there was nobody there. So he could pick what day. So he was his boss was just like, just stay home because you do everything there. And what they found in their circumstance was that actually productivity went up.
Yeah.
When people were remote. I'm sure that's true as well.
Yes.
Productivity was higher with people working remote than it was when they were coming into the office. So why wouldn't they want to keep it that way?
Yeah. And to your point, Tanya, a lot of the candidates that we run into, they say, if I've proven that I can effectively do this job at home, why do I need to go into the office? I'm more effective. I'm not sitting in traffic,
right.
Going and coming from work, my work-life balance. So they've established a home routine or a hybrid routine. So that's sometimes the conflict we may get with our clients that want to bring employees back into the work, is that the employees say, I've proven that I can be even more effective working from home. Yeah.
And the numbers say it all, right? That's the bottom line. If the numbers increased, they got the proof right there. So
Right.
Yes. Well, did I miss anything else, ladies?
No, I think so.
Okay, I was making sure. Thank you both so much. It's been a pleasure. We always got some great nuggets for y'all, and you always share great things with our audience. Can you just leave everyone with how they can find out more about TRA, or if they're interested in them? Can you leave that with us?
You can find us at www.hrksrecruits.com.
Absolutely.
Great. I was reading, we had one more comment by Cherie. Agree, leadership in HR should re-examine their back-end office practices to make sure they are consistently communicated to candidates and current employees. Yes, thank you, Cherie. And on that note, I will officially say thank you, everyone, for joining us, whether you're watching it now or later. We hope you will continue to join us on a monthly basis as we bring these nuggets from the Recruitment Alliance, or TRA, as we affectionately call it. Please follow us. As they mentioned already, you know where to find TRA and also HRKS, because we know HR and recruitment.
Absolutely. And you actually had another question that came in. Can you believe that?
Oh, yeah. Okay, Abby. Yes, it just popped in here. Do managers generally embrace or fear the remote work environment shift?
Ooh, that's a great question. And a lot of them do. A lot of them do because they're struggling with, how do I manage a remote workforce and or a hybrid workforce,
Mhm.
and have people in the office and keep that culture, keep the employee engagement. So there's a fear around that because there's not a written pathway to how to get there. So that's why they need help and coaching and support on how to keep employees engaged. So it's a huge challenge. Yeah, we all learned how to do it when we had to be home, but we weren't doing it well in most cases. So it is a challenge. And that's why some companies do want the employees back into the office. They have to physically see you. But I'm getting the work done from home. So there's that's a whole nother show to really talk about management.
Yes, it is. I think we've actually touched on that a little bit in the past. But I can also say, if anyone out there is watching and needs assistance with that, we can help you.
Absolutely. Definitely do that.
Yes, TRA is here to help. We can help you. So for sure. But that is I think we covered that a little bit. We may come back and cover it again on another show, because that's a hot topic as well, because a lot of people are in that position.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we're done. Am I safe to say? I don't see any more questions.
Thank you.
Rolling here, as I say, farewell. I think we're good. So thank you, ladies, so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next month on the TRA version of the Radical Edge of HR. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you follow us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.